With elections on the horizon in both Israel and the United States, does Benjamin Netanyahu have everything to gain from the war in Iran, and Donald Trump a lot more to lose? For Israel's Prime Minister, the war is the culmination of a long-standing political dream. Polling suggests the war is popular in Israel too, but things are a lot more complicated for Donald Trump. The political stakes are high for both leaders, but when Benjamin Netanyahu says that the war is an opportunity, does that opportunity complement or collide with Donald Trump's interests? From the BBC, I'm Tristan Redmond in London, and this is The Global Story on YouTube. Jeremy, the BBC's international editor, thank you so much for joining us again. We are at the end of a pretty momentous week in the Middle East, so we're very happy to have you here to help decipher it all. We are talking to you on Thursday morning. It's important to date stamp all this because everything's moving so fast. Today with you, we really want to focus on what it might mean for Benjamin Netanyahu and what it might mean for Donald Trump. Let's start by zooming in on Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu. What is his main motivation by pursuing this war against Iran?
He would say his main motivation is to keep Israel safe, to get rid of its most dangerous enemy that he has argued for many, many years, that the Islamic Republic of Iran poses an existential threat to Israel because of its they denied it many times, the Iranians, but he was always convinced they were after a nuclear weapon, and they wanted to put Israel in the greatest danger. When they say death to Israel, he believed very strongly they meant it absolutely literally. Death to Israel, death to Israelis, death to Jews. For many, many years, the Iranians built up this network, the so-called of axis of resistance, which included particularly Hezbollah in Lebanon. And in more recent times, they have been a backer of the Palestinian group. And there's another factor working for him as well, an internal political factor. Israel has elections this year. They have to have elections by October. He has always run on the basis that he is Mr. Security. He is somebody who will keep Israel and Israelis safe. And after the 7th of October attacks, that reputation took a pummeling. And while he's been steadily rebuilding his approval rating, he was in no sense dominating the polls. If sometime between then and now he can go to the people and say, I have eliminated our worst nightmare, vote for me. He would say it's all about Israel's safety, of course, but he also, I think over the years, there's plenty of evidence that he conflates the security of Israel with his continuing presence in the Prime Minister's office.
Okay, so it's potentially an election winner or an election saver for him, but it's not political opportunism, is it? Because he has been consistent over many decades in his desire to do something about the Iran threat.
No, this is a really deeply held conviction. Mm-hmm. I remember talking when Ahmadinejad was the president, which is getting on for 20 years ago now. I remember Netanyahu came into the BBC office in Jerusalem, and he said, and he's used this phrase a lot, different times, he said, it's 1938 and Ahmadinejad is Hitler. Mm-hmm. This is deeply, deeply felt for Netanyahu, but the thing which has always been missing from the equation, because there have been lots of flurries over the years when there's been quite deep debates inside Israel about whether or not they should take military action. In fact, I remember talking to a Mossad person, 2011, 2012, there was a big flurry of talk about an attack then, and that person said to me, yeah, I think we should do it because we're going to have to do it sooner or later, do it now on our timetable. Well, it didn't happen. Why didn't it happen? Because the Americans were against it. Netanyahu has also felt very strongly that the only way to do it properly is with the Americans. And now he has a president in the White House who is prepared to go along with that. And now for Netanyahu, it's all come together in a really felicitous way.
Well, it's very interesting that you raise it like this, Jeremy, because we've had a very specific question from one of our listeners, Maggie, on this point. Maggie wrote to us because she wanted to understand why it is and how it is that past US presidents have avoided this scale of conflict with Iran. Why has it not happened until now? And have there been any close calls, moments where it almost happened in the past?
I'll tell you why they didn't do it. It's because they thought it might spread. They thought the Gulf states might get involved. They thought the Straits of Hormuz might get closed.
All of which are now happening.
Yeah,
almost.
and the world oil business would take a hell of a hit and pump prices, which is a big deal in America, and that would be, massive electoral jeopardy. Plus the fact that the world's most turbulent region will go into another big spate of upheaval, and that's something which I don't think any American president wanted to do. There have been lots of talks about what to do. I mean, let's think about the time back in when American troops were in Iraq, and that protracted, war was going on there, and American troops were getting killed, and a lot of the time they were getting killed by, particularly with shaped charges, which the pro-Iranian Iraqi militias had learned how to construct from Iran. And of course, there was a lot of talk about whether, never mind going after Iran's proxies inside Iraq, go after Iran itself. Remember the late John McCain. He was once overheard on a live mic, to the tune of the Beach Boys' Barbara Ann. The Americans have seen Iran, a big country, 90 million people, considerable oil resources, a very high level of technical expertise as well, or they wouldn't be able to get involved in enrichment in the way that they did. And they've seen it, of course, as a potential threat. But then it's one thing is to identify the threat. The other thing is how you deal with the threat. Do you try and contain it? Or do you try and confront it? Or do you indeed, as Donald Trump's doing and Benjamin Netanyahu, do you try and smash it? They've gone for smash this time around.
I mean, it sounds a bit like what you're saying is that the risks and the stakes of going to war with Iran and the context haven't really changed. The variable is the personalities involved, and one personality in particular, Donald Trump. Is that fair?
I think this wouldn't be happening without Donald Trump, which of course his fans say this as well. Only Donald Trump could do this. Only Donald Trump would have the guts. Only Donald Trump would have the vision. Only Donald Trump would realize that these guys have been jerking us around for 47 years and it's got to stop. I mean, he says pretty much the same things himself. The question is the degree to which he has thought and his people have thought about the day after, what happens next. Does it matter if a new round of chaos is touched off in the Middle East because of more wars? Donald Trump, it's been well documented. In his first term, loads of people wrote books about what it was like to work with him, and I think there's no secrets here. He doesn't really do his homework in terms of reading, extensive policy papers. The question is whether going with your gut and with a small team around him, because of course what he's also done is got rid of much of the national security superstructure that had been built up over the years to advise the president in his decision making. Now it's the top team, which of course are handpicked, and they're handpicked as well to agree with him. So essentially their job is to make the president's will happen and not to challenge it. And he has decided the time has come to do this. I mean, when in his first term he ordered the assassination of Soleimani, a lot of people, supposedly experts, said there's going to be all hell to pay. And there wasn't particularly. There was a response, but it was quite performative.
Well, that was Donald Trump's first term. The second term is a slightly different proposition. In 2025, in June last year, the United States and Israel had this so-called 12-day war against Iran. Why wasn't that the moment for all-out war?
Well, do you remember that moment when, after that, Israel thought, well, they'd continue, and there were airstrikes planned? I think there were planes in the air, and Trump turned them around. I think he wanted to say, this is one and done. I've done it. I've gone in there. One raid, biggest raid ever, the most accurate raid ever, the most destructive raid ever, and now we've got a huge victory. Bingo. Go home, end it, move on. He likes to bank his successes. And this time round, why have they gone further? Now, that is an interesting one, and we don't really know. There are lots of theories going around, and the confusion that seems to be, or rather the chaotic nature of the decision-making, seems to be reflected in the different things that different people in the Trump administration say, not least the president himself. On that first Saturday morning, when he was at Mar-a-Lago in his white baseball cap at the podium, he was talking about not just he went through the whole litany of 47 years of pain that the Americans have had with Iran since the Islamic Revolution. He went right back to the beginning.
It's been mass terror, and we're not going to put up with it any longer.
Some of the things he said, like they can be close to getting a nuclear weapon. There's no evidence for that. They have ballistic missiles that very soon will be able to hit the United States. There's no evidence for that. But he said all these things, and he's repeated them. And he also said this will now be a once-in-a-generation opportunity, once in several generations opportunity for Iranians to take back their country.
When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations.
Well, they walked that one back a bit now. And I think that's because they are the regime in Tehran is more resilient than they expected.
I want to ask you about who it would have been, Trump or Netanyahu, who made the final decision to go to war, because this has become quite a confused and unclear issue since then. There's a particular context which I want to run through briefly. So there were comments by the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio at the beginning of the week.
We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed.
And Netanyahu refuted that. Then Donald Trump refuted it.
I might have forced their hand. You see, we were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first. They were going to attack if we didn't do it.
Then it became a political question when Mark Warner, who's a prominent Democratic senator, he's the highest ranking Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, and one of the so-called Gang of Eight, who were the US congressional leaders who were briefed on the strikes before they actually happened. Mark Warner said, this is still a war of choice that has been acknowledged by others, that was dictated by Israel's goal and timeline. So how much do we know about who took the final decision, Trump or Netanyahu, to start these strikes? Who made that call?
I don't know who actually said, but we can, based on the evidence, we can make an argument. And the argument I would make is that Donald Trump was persuaded, most likely by Benjamin Netanyahu, that this was a great time to deal with a really knotty, long-standing problem that has defeated successive American presidents. And I can imagine a conversation where he would have said something along the lines of, you have a historic opportunity here to do something that Barack Obama couldn't do, that going way back to Jimmy Carter and the hostage crisis, way back in the late 70s, that none of them could do. You can do it. You will go down in history if you do this. And what's more, it's an opportunity because look how weak they are now. In the course of the last few years of the Gaza war, the Iranian strategy of protecting themselves through an outer ring of allies and proxies, the so-called axis of resistance, is effectively smashed. Hezbollah in Lebanon took massive blows in 24. their leader assassinated. Remember the business with the exploding pagers and walkie-talkies. Bashar al-Assad in Syria, he's gone. The Houthis are still there in Yemen, but thus far they've been pretty quiet. And plus, of course, internally, massive economic problems in Iran, huge crowds on the streets in January against the regime, and the regime deployed its security forces and killed thousands, possibly tens of thousands of people on the streets. So you can see weaknesses, fractures. This is the time to move. You will kick yourself, Mr. President, if you don't take this opportunity.
Well, I mean, as journalists, we spend a certain amount of time wondering about who made the final decision, and people might wonder, well, why is that important? And I guess maybe the reason why it's important is that if it's perceived down the line not to have been an entirely White House motivated decision, then it puts doubt in people's minds about why the United States might be involved. I mean, this is all hypothetical, but these issues might become important later on, and this is a politically fraught moment for Donald Trump. You know, if things don't, if Iran, for example, were to turn into, quote unquote, a forever war, that thing that American presidents these days fear, that could be a moment of great peril for him. Now, you've been writing in the last few days about how a war in Iran is a very particular proposition militarily. Why is that?
Big country. It's something, I think, 3 times the size of Iraq, 4 times the size of Syria.
Mm-hmm.
It has more than 90 million people.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to unseat the regime is difficult, I think, will be difficult. As well as the supreme leader at the top of it, the system was built to deal with a war or assassination or the sudden death of a supreme leader. So beneath that level, there is this dense network of political institutions, and they are backed up by considerable military forces which are designed essentially for internal use. And there's the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and their mandate, they were set up after the Islamic Revolution to protect the revolution, to protect the Islamic Republic from threats at home and abroad. So they have, I think the figure that's often quoted is something like 160,000 troops, effectively, operatives inside the country, getting on for 500,000 or so in a reserve. Backing them up, there's the Basij. The Basij is a volunteer armed militia. And the numbers often quoted for the Basij go up to around 1 million. These are people who are loyal to the regime. So these are people who are prepared to go out on the streets and kill for the regime. And that makes it very hard to overthrow this sort of authoritarian system, which has been designed, built, and engineered to withstand an existential threat. And they see this as an existential threat to the survival of the Islamic Republic. And they are prepared to do whatever needs to be done to hang on to power.
When it comes to Netanyahu and Trump, where do they see their end points? Where do they want to get to? Because it strikes me that they might have very different visions of where that is. So what are their end points?
I think they do. I think that starting with Netanyahu, I think that the Israelis want to do as much damage as possible to their enemies. And if that sets off months or even years of internal chaos, crisis, bloodshed, violence inside, for example, Iran, unless it somehow laps up onto their shores, I don't think they're bothered. In fact, they probably would welcome it, because if Iran and its neighbors, its Arab neighbors particularly, are concerned and preoccupied with potential spillover from all of that, they're not going to be in any position to threaten Israel. So there's that. Different, I think, for America, because they have a global perspective. They have these close relations with Gulf countries who are really feeling the pain at the moment, because I think quite shrewdly, the Iranians are trying to spread the war. They're hitting what they've hit 12 countries or more now, They know that they haven't got the firepower to match America and Israel combined, or even either one of those on their own. Nothing like it. So what they're trying to do is go at them from a more disruptive and oblique angle, increase the pressure, particularly on Trump. Their calculation, I believe, is that hit that bruise, hit it again, hit it again, hit it again. Wait till it opens and becomes a big cut. And then Trump will say, I'm just going to declare victory now. And I can say, I've destroyed their ballistic missiles. For the second time, we've obliterated their nuclear program. But I don't think it's that simple, because there are consequences. And so that's why I think the Iranians are calculating they can tough this one out longer than he can. Well, we'll see. We don't know.
The premise of our conversation today that we wanted to put to you is,
Yes.
Does Benjamin Netanyahu have everything to win from this
Yes.
war, and Donald Trump have everything
Yeah.
to lose? Is that a fair question?
It's a fair question, and I will try and answer it. I think that so far, Israel and Netanyahu are the big winners, of course, because they're dealing with a country which is definitely their enemy, and who they see as a really serious threat. Plus, they're doing it with the Americans. What could be better from Netanyahu's point of view? He can sense a victory that he can hold and present to his people. Trump with everything to lose? Yeah, potentially. The risk of some kind of a forever war. It might not be possible to disengage in the way that he's hoping it might, and that's bad for him electorally. He was boasting, I think only a week or two ago, about how gas prices in the States have been lower on his watch than anyone, and they're going to go up because of all of this. Not that he's that bothered about it, but his position with his allies, America's allies, is taking another knock. More question marks about America's lack of adherence to international law. Again, they're not bothered about that. But these things, might have consequences. I mean, I can go on. America is a global power with a global list of preoccupations and interests, and it's not just about one thing, whereas for Israel, it's much simpler. Much more fundamental, perhaps, they'd argue. One thing I would like to end on by saying is, what about the people of Iran who have been under the cosh for many years? They could be left with a situation where there is a damaged and bruised and battered regime, but still a regime that wants to reassert itself domestically, that will deal very, very viciously with any internal problems, who will have its organs of repression and coercion intact. That doesn't look good for the people of Iran, who, in my experience, want to have a quiet life like people everywhere. So there are so many imponderables about the future, and that's why so many people who look at the region are really worried about this.
That was the BBC's international editor, Jeremy Bowen. Thanks for watching The Global Story on YouTube. We're also a podcast. We publish 5 times a week. You can find us on bbc.com or wherever you listen to your favourite shows.